Hi, my name is Trent Taylor, and today I will be presenting on the complex issue of water scarcity. Today I will be using two of my concentrations as a lens to look through to address this complex issue. Freshwater scarcity, it's a global issue and it's existed for so many generations. So many people have tried to combat this complex issues. So many teams have researched it and come up with their own conclusions on what they believe to be the main problem and how they believe they should fix it, or we can fix it. Today, I will be addressing this issue and I will be addressing the research that I've done, and I will be presenting it to you in a way and then telling you how I believe that we should use this research to combat freshwater scarcity in our own way through health and wellness and organizational leadership. So, as I said, it's this global issue that has been around for longer than we can tell. And the truth is that freshwater scarcity, our lives are dependent on it. And the hard truth is that even though this issue is global, even though our lives truly do depend on it, the education that we receive on freshwater scarcity is slim to none. And that is why in my health and wellness concentration, I will utilize our generation's interest in health and wellness to push freshwater scarcity education into this newfound interest on health and wellness. Our generation, there is a health trend like no other, right? People are interested, people want to learn, they just can't get enough, right? And we're teaching it in school, in health class and such. And so my goal is to get into the school systems and to teach some of this freshwater scarcity topics, right? I know when I was going through school, these people came by and they were like, man, you need to put this shower head on and you'll save like a gallon of water a week. And I went home and I told my parents, like, oh my gosh, like we have to save the world, right? And so we put it on, and but that wouldn't have happened, right? I'm pretty sure we took it off because it ended up not being the best shower head. But that never would have happened had I not have been educated on the issue. So therefore, the number one cause, in my opinion, of freshwater scarcity not being addressed is the fact that we aren't educated about it, that it isn't brought to our attention. I will utilize my organizational leadership, on the other hand, from a more business assessment point of view. And I will look at other research that is done, and I will dissect it in a way that says, okay, what did they look at? How did what they did, how did that help, or how could they have done it better, right? And I think one of the beautiful things about organizational leadership is that it offers this wide lens of possibilities on how to look at this issue through that lens. So I'm going to go into more depth about health and wellness. International research in geograph geographical, I'm so sorry, geographical and environmental education, which is a group, they dive deep into the questions in their research that brings up a great point, and they talk about how water scarcity is related to the educational classroom. The writer, he dives deep into water conservation, about how water conservation used to be taught in the classrooms all over the United States, which I can even remember that growing up, right? And that for some reason, that's not what's happening in today's classrooms. And one reason I believe that is because of standardized testing. I grew up in an educator household. My dad is a principal and my mom is a teacher, and it is all about teaching to the test now. Whereas when we were going through school, when I was going through school, it was less about teaching for the test and it was more about hey, teach things that these kids can that can grow them, right? And that we can like contribute to society in a positive way. And I think that's one of the reasons that this has dropped off. And this guy, um, he has a quote in there that I really like. He says, in the context of water scarcity and increasing water demand, education must play a crucial role in transforming values and habits that promote a sustainable management of the resource. And I think this is just so neat because in this quote right here, you see him say like, okay, as a researcher, as a part of a research team, we see that freshwater scarcity is not being taught in the classroom today. And we think as researchers, and we know that this is an issue, right? If people aren't warned, then they can't be held accountable for something they don't know, right? Another thing that I really enjoyed is these researchers uh, did their research on if freshwater education even works. Like if you go into a classroom and you teach on what freshwater scarcity is, it going to go in one ear and out the other? And the truth is probably to some, right? But maybe not to a few. And so these researchers go in and they go and they research what's the effectiveness of freshwater scarcity education. And they found that students tended to empathize easily with people from other countries struggling from water scarcity, and even came up with a type of water school, right? And I think this is so cool. And I think this is something we forget, is that and we grow numb to in a way as we age, right? If we can get into schools and if we can educate these students while they're developing, right? While they aren't numbed over by the harshness of the world, and we can, little kids empathize so much more than we do as adults, because we see that and we think, well, I have my own problems, right? And when in reality, these kids are looking at other kids across the world and they're saying, you don't have water? Man, I can't imagine, right? And I think we lose that when we're adults, right? So I'm going to go on to my organizational leadership side of things and kind of dive into it. I kind of talked about how we can dissect um, other people's research, but we can also dive into more of like the legal side of it, right? Because organizational leadership is more of a business approach than health and wellness. So one area that uh, we might not think of when we talk about the conservation of freshwater is farming, right? And that farming actually accounts for a lot of our freshwater loss. And there's a quote that these researchers had, and it says, in order to promote farmers PBWCB, which is a type of like freshwater scarcity, like to combat it, and develop appropriate behavioral changes in water conservation, the value foundations of the agricultural community, um, which were biospheric, altruistic, and egotistic values, should be taken into account. And so basically, what they're saying is that like we don't realize how much water is wasted by these farmers. And I come from a farmer family, right? My granddad farmed his entire life, and my dad decided he didn't want to take it over, or I might be there right now. Who knows? But one thing that we don't realize is that a lot of the watering techniques are like irrigation techniques, which is basically they flood a field, right, with this fresh water. And it's our drink. A lot of times it's drinking water, right? Or it's water that we could drink if it went through a proper filtration process, right? And I think that these researchers really talk about how if we could use more recycled water as in the farming industry, that and I'm talking like Southwest farming, right? When we like us, we don't get like a ton of rain. We need that irrigation techniques. So one of the most important parts in the discipline of organizational leadership is partnering with other people, other groups, other organizations that are also passionate about similar things. So a couple of authors dive deep. Their names are Adina Risman and Robert Smale. They dive deep into how conservation um, conservation organizations report performance information. They look at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services for help with their research, and they found that freshwater conservation efforts were enhanced through, quote, implementation of soil and water conservation with local, state, and federal funds and mandates. So, in other words, they were able to look at this and they say, like, it's not that these people don't want to save water. Sometimes it's just that they don't have the means, right? If you were to look at these farmers and you were to say, like, okay, farmers, I understand that irrigation is cheap, but hey, what if we helped you? What if we helped you get connected to this co-op that recycles water that is safe for plants, but maybe not safe for human consumption, right? Firsthand consumption. And so I think this is a way that these researchers have said, hey, it's not that people don't want to save, it's they don't have the means to save, right? And so that is how we can look at freshwater scarcity or freshwater conservation through an organizational leadership lens and also a health and wellness lens, right? And now we're going to introduce a couple themes and concepts. When addressing freshwater scarcity and the major themes and concepts, right? We talk about climate change. It just cannot be ignored, right? And that is one thing that I think sometimes when we dive deep into these types of research is we tend to try to like go like too specific, and sometimes we forget, like, hey, like, look what other people have said, and they're a lot of times they're right? Climate change, it's factual. It's taking up our water, right? Another theme when discussing the complexity of freshwater scarcity is the agricultural consumption, right? And I'm just going to throw out another quote and a quick fact for you. This is a quote, right? 42% of all water withdrawals in the United States, um, for 42% of all water withdrawals in the United States, that's how many, like, that's how much fresh water that we're losing agriculturally, right? So that is 42% of the fresh water that we're losing is coming from agricultural loss, right? And I think that that's huge, and that we need to deal with that. And so, concluding, what I want to present when looking at research, when looking through these lenses of freshwater, of organizational leadership and health and wellness, I want to propose we through a business lens, we look at these things. We give not people's, we give people the means to save water, right? We give these farmers, hey, like, we have the education on how to save water. Partner with us, right? Help us save water, right? People need water to live. You need people to eat your food, right? That's what we need. And then through a health and wellness lens, to partner with schools, right? Schools are always looking to bring people in to speak. And we go into these health classes, we go into these science and nutrition classes when these kids are young, when they're moldable, when they can easily empathize with others. And we say, listen, like, there are people out there that they're yearning for fresh water, right? Their bodies, like, they need it and they don't have it. They're walking miles and miles and miles to find fresh water when all you have to do is go to the back of your house. Hey, if you put this like this shower head on, or if you do this little thing, we educate them with what we know about freshwater loss, and we say, hey, will you help us, right? We give these kids something to contribute, right? And they'll jump on it. So in conclusion, right, that's that's my uh presentation on how we can better combat freshwater scarcity.